Hello, you're welcome to week 5 of the online course on youth employability and entrepreneurship, the role of digital economy. It's a course delivered by IDEP of the UNACA. Congratulations for completing Module 4 and welcome to this exciting fifth week that focuses on financing youth development. You can contact me via the email on the screen if you have questions, if you have clarifications to seek. Thank you and welcome on board. So for this week, the session will be focusing on diverse financial instruments that fund youth development programs, including domestic, public, and private financial sources that align with 2030 and agenda and the Addis Ababa Action Agenda. There will also be a discussion around the indicator framework for the program, World Program of Action for Youth, and the global indicator framework for the SDG goals. At the end of this session, learners would have understood how to create an enabling business environment for young people to thrive and also ensure the emergence of firms and promotion of jobs. By way of background, youth mainstreaming in financial policy planning, programming, and administration is very important in properly addressing the challenges as regards young people. Various financing mechanisms exist across Africa that integrate traditional approaches, such as the cancellation of the country's debts and the promotion of innovative financing, example, green bonds, and other incentives and guarantee funds. Sadly, there have been a lot of disparities in the management of these challenges that young people face when it comes to employment. For instance, under Agenda 2030, a greater financial effort is devoted to less developed countries to enhance their finance programs aimed at employability and entrepreneurship of young people. So, what happens to youth in other countries? The UN developed the DFAs, the Development Finance Assessment, and other tools to support and enable member states and their development practitioners to identify the best sources of finance for their sustainable development efforts. The course also looks at participatory budgeting as something that can be integrated in the DFAs to enable countries to introduce youth perspectives into budgets and monitor youth spending in the context of the 2030 agenda. For instance, in various countries, the national budgets that focus on young people, how much of these are actually going into youth programming? How much of it is going into youth policies? And how much of it is going into administrative related aspects, the salaries and other things of the staff? We need to look at these things and how are young people really benefiting from the budget as regards the youth development fund for the country, if any, and any other financing mechanism in place. And so, as we explore this course using Module 5, I enjoin you to think, put on the thinking cap and wear your youth lens to begin to explore on how young people are adequately being taken care of when it comes to financing their development. So the 2030 Agenda, Africa Agenda 2063, and Addis Ababa Action Agenda provide strategic opportunities to strengthen member states' financial commitments to the SDGs implementation, as well as promote innovative financing and increase investments for sustainable youth development. So moving forward, Module 5 will be covering two key areas: financing youth development within the context of 2030 agenda and financing youth development within the context of Addis Ababa Action Agenda. More details are in your course The UN DESA identified 90 youth-related indicators out of the 232 indicators in the framework, as earlier mentioned. When it comes to youth employment, SDG indicator 8.b paragraph 1, which measures total government spending in social protection and employment programs as a proportion of the national budget and GDP, also measures progress towards target 8.b, aimed to develop and operationalize a global strategy for youth employment, as well as implement the Global Jobs Pact of ILO by 2020. This commitment aligns with that set out in paragraph 16 of the Addis Ababa Action Agenda. Therefore, progress can easily be measured through the relevant SDG indicator. While SDG Target 15.c on the pursuit of sustainable livelihood opportunities refers to local communities, which include youth, there are no youth-specific indicators to measure the contributions of young people. This is a gap that has been identified, and we encourage you as policymakers to look into this and see what can be done. Addis Ababa Action Agenda is an outcome of the Third International Conference on Financing for Development held in Addis Ababa in 2015 and was later endorsed by the UN General Assembly in its Resolution 69-313 of 2015 July. The Action Agenda presents a policy framework that realigns financial flows with public goals and addresses all sources of finance, looking at public, private, domestic, and international, and also reiterates that countries have primary responsibility for their economic and social development while committing the international community to create an enabling environment for their development. So, Addis Ababa Action Agenda encourages domestic resource mobilization and then support by the international community for the nations. Specifically, paragraph 7 of the Action Agenda recognizes investment in children and young people as very critical to achieving inclusive, equitable, and sustainable development for both the present and future generations. Paragraph 12 commits to a new social compact that will provide fiscally sustainable and nationally appropriate social protection systems and measures for all, including floors, with a focus on those furthest below the poverty line and the vulnerable persons with disabilities, indigenous persons, children, young people, and elderly people. Paragraph 16 is a very interesting paragraph, and it emphasizes the significance of incorporating youth strategies and policies into sustainable development actions to ensure that the needs and aspirations of young people are met. This is a very good provision that can be used in advocacy to policy and decision making leaders. In its provisions on science, technology, innovation, and capacity building, paragraph 11.4 commits to promote access to technology and science for women, youth, and children, and to further facilitate accessible technology for persons with disabilities. note. For your further reading, I will enjoin you to go through this, looking at the UN DESA's 2015 Addis Ababa Action Agenda of the Third International Conference on Financing for Development. Very key for you to study. And also the Financing Sustainable Development and Developing Sustainable Finance, a DESA briefing note. So look at both the agenda and look at the briefing note on the agenda so that you understand the kind of financing mechanisms that can be adopted by various countries in Africa to promote youth funding. For your assignment, using the Addis Ababa Action Agenda and the knowledge you've gained so far from Module 5, will require that you recommend free youth-friendly financial mechanisms that can be adopted by your organization and by your country to promote youth employability and entrepreneurship in the digital economy, especially within this context of the COVID-19 pandemic. So, as points to note, I enjoin you to perform a SWOT analysis before you recommend the three of the financial mechanisms so that you can understand the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and threats faced by any of the financial mechanisms as regards youth development funding. Submit your assignment to me via the email and do this within 48 hours of studying Module 5. For the group discussion this week, the focus is on what financial mechanisms for youth development exist in your country that can be adapted and replicated by other countries. So, after performing the SWOT analysis, it will be good for you to now recommend the ones that have really been successful when it comes to the implementation and that can be adapted by other countries as best practice for them and models. So I invite you to post your comments on the online discussion. Now, I invite you to continue your studies by looking at the lecture notes and the further reading list as we prepare for the very final module of this online course. Hope to see you next week. Bye.